All right, guys, I've been a full-time real estate investor for over 5 years. I have accumulated a portfolio of over $15 million, and I have done 500 off-market wholesaling and flip transactions in that period of time. And I have learned an incredible amount around business and what it takes to be a real estate entrepreneur. I've also mentored dozens of other people to help them build out their businesses. And there are several different financial mistakes that I see people make very early on that kind of like throttle their success with the rest of their business. And so my goal with this video is to go over the 11 most common things that I myself made, and I've also seen other new investors make that really are kind of unnecessary and just make it so their business can't grow nearly as quickly as it potentially could. All right, so first off, and this is always a really big one, and it's also one that's a little bit weird for people, is that they end up buying rental properties too early. I know that sounds weird because you're getting into real estate because you want to buy rental properties. So why would you not buy things as soon as possible? Well, the problem is that most people are not in a situation where they can actually afford a rental property, right? Or they kind of like stretch to buy their first property that comes across their desk because they're excited. When in reality, you should be spending that first bit of money that you have learning how to make real money and actually build out a real estate business. Okay. And so they should be learning to invest in marketing, investing it into flip houses so that you can get some more working capital to put towards your portfolio, looking at hiring a mentor or joining like a company of somebody else that you can go and you can work in, right? And kind of saving your cash that way. Because ultimately, the most important thing with building out a rental portfolio and building a real estate company is that it does take a lot of money to do so, just to be honest. And so if you like save, and then you dump that into the first property that you find and add to your portfolio, very realistically, unless you have a super high income already, you're going to end your business before it even starts because you're not going to have any money left to buy more deals in the future. It's really important when you're starting out to resist the urge to buy that first property to keep and instead invest in yourself and systems. And I guarantee that over the following years, you will have dozens, if not hundreds of other opportunities to buy more properties. Item number 2 is renting an office. This was one that kind of went away during COVID because we all got used to remote work. There was a big rise of these kind of virtual companies where you never really saw each other. But I have seen this pattern sort of start to recur with people where all of a sudden they are going and signing these leases and going into office spaces so they can hang a sign, they can have like a central place to work. They want to like, I don't know, look like they're important. They're doing some kind of business endeavor. But really for a lot of people, it is unnecessary. I have never had an office space for my business up until now. I've built a team up to as many as 30 people, and it has been virtual the entire time. And it's worked perfectly well, and it's helped me have a lot more capital that instead of paying for rent, I can instead put into systems or heck, even pay myself. And that works out a lot better. If you need somewhere to be able to focus, like you have kids or you just can't work in your home because you have too many distractions, go to like a co-working space, a couple $100 a month. It'll be a shared space with other people, but that's totally fine. But going and locking money into a long-term commitment with a rental lease for an office just doesn't really make sense most of the time. Item number 3 is an overly expensive car that they convince themselves that they need for some whatever reason in the real estate business. Now, one of the areas I see this most commonly is people are going to start flipping houses and they decide for some reason they need to be able to haul construction materials. So what they do is they go and they get like a pickup truck, or they go and they buy like a trailer set up for whatever car they currently have. Sure, I guess you look cool, you kind of look the part, but in reality, the amount of money that's going to go into that probably isn't necessary, especially for the kind of volume that you're going to be doing early on. And also too, just to be honest, if you're doing this business correctly as an entrepreneur, you should be hiring people to do a lot of the work for you. And a big part of what their job will be going to get materials, or you can also just like pay companies like Home Depot and Lowe's to deliver materials to your work site. People look for weird justifications to buy themselves toys like cars. Don't be one of those people. And instead of having a large monthly payment, apply that money towards your business and you will get a much better return. For me personally, I lease H2 Brew Crosstrek for $320 a month. And it's a lease, so it's a recurring payment, which I understand people like Dave Ramsey don't like that. But I just work it into my budget. I don't have any long-term debt, and it's very easy for me to budget for that and put my money towards my business instead of a car that I don't really need. Item number 4 is unnecessary partnerships. And what I mean by that is a partnership that you don't really need because they aren't an equal split in the value each are bringing. Where I tend to see this a lot with new investors is when they like pair up with somebody that is a more seasoned investor in their market, and they do a 50-50 partnership, and the seasoned investor is going to bring all of the money to flip the deal. And then the newbie's like, sweet, I don't have to go get a loan, I'm not taking any risk. I'm just going to pay them half. That might sound good on paper, but honestly, it is a pretty bad way to do a deal because ultimately you are taking on a debt from that person, and it is about the most expensive debt that you can get if it's a good deal, right? Realistically, what would be better for you in that specific situation would be to go and get a hard money loan, bring in somebody else for a second loan if you need to borrow the down payment to get that hard money loan, and just pay your debt on that hard money loan in terms of interest and points, right? Don't go and get a partner with it unless they are bringing you some very specific knowledge and or expertise around the deal. Like, it would be different if you were bringing on that person and they're supplying their construction crew, they're doing the work, they're helping with all the management, and you basically just brought the deal to them. Totally, that's way better because they're actually going to be bringing in that additional work to get their 50% share. But if it's something like they are just going to be giving you money, then you can do things a lot cheaper way and make a lot more money on your early deals and apply it towards your business. And as a result, you will grow a lot faster. Item number 5 is an expensive website and or branding package. And this is one of my favorite ones that I see a lot because it's typically from people that are a little bit timid to get started with the hard things in the business, i.e. going and making sales calls or running marketing campaigns because those feel more challenging. And so what they do is they spend an incredible amount of time and money doing things like finding someone to build a website, tinkering around on Canva to build a logo, trying to make their business that doesn't actually exist or make money yet look absolutely perfect. And then what happens is they finally go out and they start talking to sellers, they start trying to make deals, and they realize that they actually hate the business. And so they just wasted all that time and money. What I always recommend people do is to go out, make some offers first, see if you can get some contracts signed, learn to have those hard conversations, get rejected by sellers, walk weird hoarder houses, and make sure that you actually want to do this business first. And then if you do, and you start to make some money, then you can apply that towards building your professional web presence and your brand. But until then, kind of save your money and just focus on learning to actually do the basics of the business. And then you'll have plenty of capital to be able to apply to that sort of perception that you're trying to build without needing to just procrastinate and waste a bunch of time at the beginning. Item number 6 is custom CRM softwares. And so if you're not familiar with CRMs, it's basically the online platform that you use to track all of your leads that come into your desk. This is a recent sort of waste that I see people go through because there's a ton of gurus out there on social media and other places that are trying to pitch people on these different CRM platforms that they offer, whether it's like a custom Podio build out or it's a Salesforce, something different, but they will always claim to have these fancy automations and AIs and different things. It's not necessary, honestly. We have scaled up to doing 15 to 20 deals a month on average with an off-the-shelf platform called RE Simply. Costs a few $100s a month. There's no like developer needed. We literally just sign up for it online and use it. And a lot of the legit operators I know use this exact system. And so if you have someone that you're talking to that is trying to sell you on their fancy product with automated AI and everything else, and it's going to cost you thousands of dollars, be skeptical. I guarantee you probably don't need that. And if you do get to a point where you need it, you'll know. But if you're watching this video, honestly, that's probably not you because your means you would be doing a heck of a lot more deals than I am and a lot of the people that I know. And honestly, it's just a big waste of money to go that complex so early. Item number 7 is high interest debt, mostly in the way of credit cards. And so this is one that kind of happens mostly out of ignorance by a lot of people because they want to start investing into marketing or building out systems. They don't have a ton of cash available. And so what they do is they go and they get a bunch of different business credit cards, which is fine. A lot of them will have sign-up bonuses with points and maybe even 0% for certain spans, which you can take advantage of. But what happens is they don't figure out their business quick enough. And then all of a sudden they're paying 17, 18, 19% interest on these credit card loans, which is a really rough way to be wasting money because you're also going to just be constantly chasing paying down that principal. Instead, what would be better is you can go and you can look at getting business lines of credit, which are relatively easy to do as a small business. You can usually get them up to $50,000 and you use them just like a credit card does, where you have access to line of capital you can pull when you need it. Those will typically be between 7 to 9% interest. And although still expensive, is a lot cheaper than credit cards. And it gives you a little bit more leeway while you're kind of making that initial investment to build out your business without having to pay as much to a credit card company. Number 8 is by spending their money on too many different marketing types or marketing campaigns. And this is one that's really common with people that start to understand the fundamentals and they are looking for a way to try and have a competitive advantage over everyone else. And so what'll happen, like let's say they have a $4,000 a month budget for their real estate company, which might sound like a lot, but it is a relatively low budget overall when you look at the scale of these kind of companies. And so what they'll do is they'll put $1,000 towards direct mail. They'll hire a cold caller for $1,500. They'll put some money into PPC and YouTube ads. Then they'll hire some people to do driving for dollars. All of a sudden, they are spending all these different money and have all these different systems to track. And they're not actually getting any return because they're barely taking a nibble at all of the different kinds of systems that they're running. When realistically, what we always suggest people do is that you focus on one kind of marketing system. For us, it's typically direct mail. Direct mail was 86% of our deals last year. And you go all in on that one kind of marketing. You scale it up until you literally can't anymore. And then you start to add in another one. And so in a lot of places, just to give you absolute numbers, for example, with direct mail, if you live in a town of about 300,000 people like I do, you can usually bring that direct mail up to $25,000 or $30,000 per month before you need to even start playing with things like cold calling teams or running online ads or things like that. And that just allows you to have a simpler system and get really, really, really good at one kind of marketing. And that way, instead of trying to be pretty mediocre at a bunch, you can be the best in your market at one, and you will absolutely make a lot more money that way with a much simpler business. Item number 9 is having unnecessary staff members. And so this is something that I see once people start to make their first little bit of money and they kind of start to get lazy a little bit. What they will do is they will start bringing in VAs or administrative staff to do kind of like the boring stuff in the business, right? The stuff they really don't want to do, which is fine. I'm always a firm believer that you should outsource stuff that you don't want to do, you're not good at. But if your trade-off for that is you are now just spending your time playing golf, going to the lake, going on networking events that you're not actually productive on, then you probably shouldn't have that person, right? Just to be honest, because what that's going to do is that's going to affect your efficiency and your bottom line while also not necessarily allowing you to have a return outside of that. And so what I always tell people is that as you're scaling, when you get to a point where you really don't have any more time or you don't even necessarily know how you're going to get everything done, that's when you should be looking to outsource. And then the time that you save, you should always be looking to use to grow the business and not just for leisure. One of the biggest kind of falsities with business is that you can just build a business and hire a bunch of staff and then go and hang out and do whatever you want. Sure, I guess people post about that on Instagram and that is a reality for some people, but what they don't show you is that outside of that time flexibility is they are having a lot of periods where they're having to work really hard. They are having a lot of challenges they have to deal with, and having unnecessary staff is just going to make that happen more regularly, right? And ultimately you're going to be just losing money for really no reason, just because you don't want to work. And so just be selective, especially in the early phase about bringing on team members, because there's no point in bringing on the responsibility of another human if you really aren't in a place where that makes sense for you yet. Items number 10 are expensive workshops or unnecessary mentors. Let me say I'm a firm believer in mentors, right? And finding someone that has built a business or a system that you actually want to replicate. That's how I got started. Was I joined a wholesaling and flipping mentorship program. It cost me $8,000 that I did not have yet. And I put it on a credit card. So I did a lot of things that I'm talking about not doing in this YouTube episode. I went and I did this, right? And it fundamentally gave me the entire blueprint, entire playbook to build out the business that I have scaled to do about approximately $4 million in 2024. But there are so many different things like this out there now that it can be kind of hard to know when to start and stop. And so I always recommend you find a coach or a mentorship program that is very specific to what you are doing. And then I also recommend that you go and you find a more general entrepreneurial networking group that is local to your area so you can see what other entrepreneurs are doing face to face. The things that I am always skeptical of are things like very expensive mindset coaching, because that tends to be kind of just woo-woo-y, and it doesn't actually give you any actionable stuff, but it gets people excited, and that's why they charge so much money, so they can make so much money. Being really conscientious of doing things like going to conferences with big speakers just because you're a fan of that speaker. And people will pay thousands and thousands of dollars to go to things like Tony Robbins events, and then they'll come home and not actually get anything taken away from that. So don't get distracted by those sort of things, and instead focus on stuff that is very specific to the business you're trying to build. And that way you can make the most out of your educational opportunities and not go to fluff that is just described as education just because it makes you feel good. Item number 11, and this is always kind of a weird one, is people spend too much money reinvesting in their business and not enough paying themselves. Here's the thing. Once you start to have even a slightly successful business, what will happen is you will start to add on team members and systems and marketing and processes and whatever. And the next thing you know, sure, you're making more revenue, but your profitability is staying the same or sometimes even going down, right? And you end up making less money, but with more headaches and a bigger and bigger problems. And this is a really, really tough place to end up, because ultimately what can happen is you get to a point where you're not even necessarily happy with where things are going, and you're not even getting the results that you wanted, but why you started a business anyway. So kind of like, what's the point? And when people are really, really early on in this, what I see is people get so ingrained to the hustle mindset that they're like, I'm going to live on as little as possible and reinvest in the business as much as I possibly can, to the point that it's detrimental on their personal and social life. And I respect that grind, right? That's great. But the problem is, in doing that, is you're putting yourself in such a detrimental state personally that you're never going to be able to perform on a business level, right? And then also too, if you don't take any money out of your business to pay yourself, there is always a not insignificant risk that your business could collapse and you could go to zero, and you did all of that for nothing. Like, it can feel like you're invincible once you start making a little bit of money, but that is a very real thing that can happen to people. Is your business can fail and you can lose everything. And if it takes years for that to happen, for everything to collapse, and you didn't pay yourself at all, then you can walk away with absolutely no money and end up in a very, very bad spot. So what I always recommend people do is to start with the profit first model. You can look up the books, go Google profit first, and set it up so that you are paying yourself a fixed profit and fixed wage as early as you can in your business, and just make that a habit and never stop, right? And by doing that, it forces you to have a leaner business, it forces you to be better at your different systems in place, and it makes sure that if things do go a little bit weird or you get burned out, that at least you got some money for all the trouble you put into building this business. All right, guys, so those are my 11 things. I see them with new investors all the time. So go back, rewatch that. If you are curious about any more of those, go ahead and comment below, and I would be happy to give you some guidance. Besides that, subscribe to this channel if you enjoy anything that I do. Also, if you want some more long-form content from me, check out my podcast, Collecting Keys, where you can hear me have conversations with a wide range of investors, as well as my other co-hosts over there, where you go very more into the deep dives of what this business looks like. Besides that, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.